Welcome back to the Death Valley Insider YouTube page. I am your host, Kenny Van Doren, and today I'm joined by Rob Cassidy, National Recruiting Director for Rivals.com, covering all things college and high school basketball. It's the first time we've had Rob on with us, so we'd like you to get a look, learn a little bit more about Rob, and we'll ask him how he's doing right now. How are you doing, Rob?
Doing great, Kenny. Thanks for having me on. How are things in Houston? I'll be down there for the McDonald's game in a couple weeks, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, weather's nice here. I think we're past what the winter of the South is, so I think you'll enjoy it when you get down here and see a lot of those guys play. Unfortunately, though, for LSU fans, there won't be any LSU commits at the McDonald's All-American game, but there are a lot of things to talk about on the LSU front, and that's why you're here with us today. And I want to touch on just to start off, the 2024 LSU commitments, and there's only two right now, and that is Curtis Givens, a four-star guard from Florida, and Robert Miller, who's a four-star forward from Pasadena, Texas, just outside of Houston. Starting with Curtis Givens, though, what can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he's actually originally from Memphis. He plays his high school basketball at Montverde Academy. So he's just kind of in Florida for high school. He's an interesting prospect in the way that his upside is off the charts. He sees the floor incredibly well, trusts himself, can really score it at the basket, can get by a man, get into the teeth of a defense and kind of kick it out. The issues with him are twofold, really. Is sometimes he trusts himself a little too much and he'll get into some pretty sloppy turnovers. But if he cleans that up, he's a high upside guy. He plays on the best high school team in America, which, you can see as a good thing or as a bad thing when you project him long term. Because, he is playing with three McDonald's All-Americans, so he's not asked to do a lot from a scoring standpoint at Montverde. But on the AU circuit, he showed that he can. He's got a pretty reliable jumper from the outside. As I mentioned, he's pretty good at creating his own shot off the dribble. Maybe he needs to do a little bit of work there. But if he can kind of cut down those turnovers and get, a better sense for not throwing the ball 10 rows into the seats every once in a while, I think he could be a day one contributor at LSU.
You talk about that he's being from Memphis. If you look at it, so many future casts to Memphis over the last year. What went into that decision, though, to go to LSU?
I haven't really talked to him about it. I know he had a pretty good relationship with some of the assistants and with McMahon there. I think it gets him back a little bit closer to his Memphis home, keeps him in the South, gets him out of Florida, and allows him to play in the SEC, which is something that he said a long time ago that he really wanted to do. I think he likes the idea of playing some of those high-profile road games at Kentucky and elsewhere like that. So I think it's that, and just like anything else in recruiting these days, money talks. We we sit here and we can talk about all we want and say, it's about relationships, and it is to an extent. But at the end of the day, these players are mostly going to go to a place where they feel valued, and coaches and programs show that value with NIL money, and it's we can pretend that's not the driving force in recruiting these days, but it is. That's just it's the open shut of it.
For sure. And I kind of want to pivot now to Robert Miller, the four-star forward. Listed at 6'9", 201 now. What can you tell us about him?
Now he's one that's projectable. Like he's a guy that we look at as a really, really strong long-term prospect and possibly a future pro down the road. He's not there yet. The potential hasn't turned to production as consistently as you'd like. But anytime you've got a guy that with that size that plays on the perimeter like he does, he's one that can step out, create a mismatch. He handles the ball pretty well out there, and he can shoot it. The next step for him will be kind of toughing it up and playing with a motor all the time. He's one of these guys where you can go see him on a Wednesday, and he'll look like a can't miss instant impact type prospect. And then you can go see him on the following Tuesday and he'll have 5 and 3 and be 3 for 14 and just not really, the motor's not there sometimes. But that comes with youth, I think. Once he realizes that he has to play hard every single possession, the projectables are there because he is, there just aren't a lot of guys that are built like him with those kind of perimeter skills. And once the motor comes and somebody gets onto him about maybe helping out more on the boards, and things like that, I think his upside is like a Brandon Miller type. He kind of reminds you of a young Brandon Miller at this point. Maybe doesn't have, all the peripheral skills as Brandon does right now, but that could come. And I think, best case scenario, that's the kind of prospect you're looking at.
He's already got one part down, and that's the last name. Closing out the class of 2024, Robert Miller is ranked 69th nationally, and Curtis Givens is 91st. Those are the only two guys signed to the Tigers at the moment for the class of 2024. So let's pivot to the class of 2025. Currently, no commits for the Tigers, but there are a couple names out there that I've been monitoring, and of course, you have been monitoring as well. I want to start off with Jaden Toombs, who's from Amarillo originally, playing in Dallas right now, and it looks like Texas Tech has him. It feels like it. He's been on campus twice with them, but Ronnie Hamilton, an assistant for the Tigers, and Matt McMahon have been there to visit him. I've been in contact a lot recently. What do you like about Jaden Toombs?
He's one that, the like kind of, well, maybe not as extreme as Miller, but he's a potential kid. He is one that needs some toughening him up. But the size, the fluidity, he handles the ball pretty well. He can step out a bit. His range extends beyond the paint. He's not going to light it up from three or anything like that. But, having been able to impact games on the boards the way he does and kind of play, he's got a face-up game that's developed. He's not a great defender yet. But I think that will come with time because he does have, he has the size and he has the skill. When you look at him, he looks like, he's adding muscle and becoming a more college-ready prospect. The next thing will be for him this summer is just, if he can continue to diversify that offensive game, become a better outside shooter, either from further than the midway range, and play better defense, I think. Sometimes he can get a reputation as being a little bit soft, I think, which I think is maybe a little bit unfair for him. I think he's just young, and he is young for his age. So it'll be interesting to see. I think this summer will kind of show what kind of prospect he's going to become long term.
I'm glad you noticed that too with the defense. Talking with him on Sunday, he mentioned that on the AAU circuit this summer, he wants to improve his blocking game. He wants to improve guarding smaller players as well, getting up in a guard's face if he has to. And that's a good thing to note. He is up to 6'10", dropped some weight though. He's down to 230 now. Four-star center, as we mentioned, ranked 98th in the class of 2025.
Yeah, I think that's going to help him. Let me touch on that real quick. He has dropped some weight. I saw him about a month ago, and he looks a lot slimmer. And I think that is going to help him when he, like you said, staying in front of guards when he gets caught in a switch or something like that. That's kind of been a weak point of his game. But you can tell he's put in the work because he is. Like, as you mentioned, that's not just lip service. He looks different physically than he did a year ago at this time.
And he also mentioned too, he's thinking he's not done growing as well. So he could push closer to 7 feet if that comes to it. Want to throw out there another school in the mix for him is SMU right now. So those are the three teams: Texas Tech, LSU, and SMU. Another Texas guy, Hudson Greer. Kind of an interesting recruitment in my eyes. His dad handles most of these conversations, is what he told me. He said LSU wants to get him on campus as soon as possible this spring once he's done with his season at Lake Travis in Austin, Texas. He's ranked 38th nationally, a four-star small forward. What can you tell us about Hudson?
We really liked him a lot. He moved up in the last update based on kind of the performance. He plays, like you said, he doesn't play at a nationally ranked, nationally relevant high school. So you don't really see a ton of him in the high school season. But he came out to Pangos All-American camp in Las Vegas last year and played against, the other top 100 players in the country, some in 2024, some in 2025. I thought really popped off the page. He's, in today's game where versatility is everything, he's a guy that can guard multiple positions. He's a guy that can create matchup problems on the perimeter because of his length and his ability to handle the ball and create shots for himself. I think people think of him as kind of a spot-up shooter because that's what he does during the AAU season. He plays on a pretty loaded team where he doesn't have to do a lot of the shot creation. But on the high school level and at Pangos, he kind of showed a little bit of wiggle and a little bit of an ability to get his own shot, to get to the basket off the bounce too. And, I think his trajectory is as encouraging as anybody's. He wasn't looked at as a national level prospect a year ago at this time, and he's kind of steadily rose as his game has developed. And I think he would continue to. And, I think he'd be a good get for LSU if they can get him on campus.
Another guy that's ranked highly right near him is Jameer Jones, a four-star small forward as well, ranked 26th nationally. If I'm not mistaken, Jameer did play at IMG at one point, now at Oak Ridge in Orlando, Florida. What have you seen from him in his development?
So I loved him at IMG. That was kind of that team kind of went south, I think. A couple other guys left the team too at the same time that Jameer did. But I don't think that's really anything on him. I think sometimes you can get into the habit of knocking players for switching schools a whole bunch of times. But in today's landscape, you almost have to. Sometimes you have to chase the right level. Sometimes you make a bad decision and you go somewhere. It's not for everybody to go to IMG or a Montvert, and it doesn't work out for you. But it's not necessarily, I think, a knock on your character to go back to find somewhere else where you can find a better situation for you and more playing time. And I think that's what Jameer has done at Oak Ridge. Now he's playing alongside of a point guard in that class, Jalen Reese in 2025, who I think they've kind of meshed well together. And, he's one that's going to be a national level prospect as well going forward. Jones is, obviously his game is kind of a bully. He's big for his position. He can kind of get into a guy, finishes through contact very, very well. He's a dude that's going to get to the free throw line. And that's kind of what you get out of him.
Another forward on the Tigers' radar, one in state, and that's something I want to talk to you a little bit more about. A lot of our subscribers on our message board are asking why is Matt McMahon and his staff not recruiting more in state for these Louisiana kids? And the guy that comes to mind is Chris Cenac Jr., who is at Isidore Newman in New Orleans, four-star power forward. What have you liked from him? And then we can get into more about the recruiting in Louisiana.
Yeah, he's one that's going to come up the rankings a little bit. We've seen him this year a couple times, and I think he's kind of grown from a motor perspective. He's also put on some muscle in the last year. He looks different physically, and he projects as a guy that can get his own shot too. He scores from all three levels, when he has to. And he's the sample size on him isn't as big yet, so we'll probably be a little bit cautious of him from a ranking standpoint, just because there are other guys in this class I've seen 30 times. Chris, because of his high school, we've seen probably two or three. So it'll be interesting to watch him on the AAU circuit this year. He's going to kind of be a must watch if he stays in Louisiana. And we can segue into your other question. There is a lot of these kids from the South, whether it be Florida or Louisiana or Kentucky, when they hit a certain level, they tend to kind of get out of those traditional type high schools in the state. Like we mentioned, Curtis Givens, who's originally from Memphis, and end up at a Montvert or a Huntington Prep or an IGM or IMG or a prolific prep or something like that. And the rise of these kind of super high schools, I think, has taken away from a lot of schools in state recruiting, not just LSU, just because there aren't as many guys, high level national guys, that stay at their traditional high schools in the state. And there's not a basketball factory like IMG Academy in Louisiana. So you see a lot of these guys, before their junior seasons, kind of hit the bricks.
Yeah, it's also a tough thing too that I think some people don't realize is that recruiting each year is never going to be the same. It's not like football where you can go out and get 20 guys. You look at some teams, LSU could have 2 recruits this year. Look at the scholarships for next season. Maybe there's open for 5 freshmen. It can be different every single time. And looking at the future though for this LSU team, I know you maybe don't have the most in-depth knowledge of the current status of this roster, but looking back at like when Will Wade was at the head here, has recruitment changed? I mean, for the better for LSU with Matt McMahon at the helm now?
Um, I mean, I don't know if it's changed for the better. It depends how you look at it. I mean, Will Wade got kind of, I don't want to say a raw deal, but he was doing a lot of things that you could pretty much do out in the open right now, like, so I don't know. I think Will Wade's a great recruiter, and I think it's kind of unfair to compare everybody to him, just because I think wherever he lands next, he's going to be a good recruiter too. He just knows how to play the game. He knows the right people. I think in order for Matt McMahon to kind of take the next step, there's going to have to be some semblance of development and showing it on the court, right? I mean, obviously he developed John Morant. Kids love John Morant. He could use that to his advantage, but eventually there has to be another one. In recruiting these days, the two things kids are looking for, as we mentioned, is name, image, likeness, money, and who have you put in the lottery? And you can only live so long on one name alone, And I think we're seeing that in Indiana right now, where Mike Woodson has put Jalen Hood-Schiaffo in the NBA. But that's it, And now he's got some other guys there that were projected as NBA picks and maybe aren't developing the way, and that can hurt you. So I think the next year for him is going to be pivotal as far as winning goes, and as far as developing, pro prospects.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. You did mention in one of your recent articles that we mentioned Will Wade could get a better job next season. He's doing well at McNeese State. Where do you think that job could be?
Who I don't know. Does Louisville want to do that? Like, I mean, I think that he will be in the conversation for those kind of jobs. What happens at Michigan? Who knows? That might open. I think there are a lot of schools that want to hire him, and now in this landscape where you can pay kids pretty out front, I think that he's going to be a hot name. And I don't think there's much of a stigma attached to him now. But I would, judging from people that I've talked to, I would expect him to be moving jobs. I think that he will be somewhere else. I mean, I wouldn't bet my house on it, but I might bet my car on it that he will end up somewhere else.
Well, that's something we'll definitely keep an eye on. Rob, you answered all of our questions. Can you let all of our subscribers and everyone who follows us where they can follow you and find your work at rivals.com?
Yeah, you can find my work on the front page of Rivals, and you can follow me at Cassidy_Rob on Twitter, where I try to be available to people for questions and anything else. So, I don't mind having a conversation there. But I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you again. And thank you, everyone who tuned in today. You can find us at LSU Rivals and find us at deathvalleyinsider.com. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll be back sometime next